we're headed towards an island, not just any island. Its inhabitants consist of Beausoleil First Nation. There are things we can learn there, discoveries we can make, things we can take back. That is Christian Island. The Christian Island story began long before the Beausoleil First Nation people came here to live. During the spring of 1649, the Jesuit missionaries, along with the Hurons living at Fort Ste. Marie in the Midland area, were forced to abandon the fort or be massacred by the attacking Iroquois. It was decided that they would seek refuge at Christian Island, then called St. Joseph's Island, and construct a new Jesuit mission, which they named Ste. Marie II. 300 Huron families, along with 60 Frenchmen and 12 Jesuit missionaries assembled here, but their stay would be a short one. Along with the harsh winter came disease, famine, death, and fear of the Iroquois known to be prowling about the shores of the mainland. In June of 1650, they flee once again by canoe, the French taking with them the Huron on the 1,000-mile journey to Quebec, where peace, safety, and a Christian life await them. St. Joseph's Island is renamed Christian Island in respect of those who had fallen during that harsh year. Thus ended the existence of the Huron nation in this region, making way for the Ojibwe or Chippewa of Beausoleil, but that would not be for another 200 years. The story picks up here in Coldwater. The year is 1830, and Lieutenant Governor John Colborne creates an experiment in group settlement for the Ojibwe. Called the Coldwater Settlement, it is to be a model Upper Canadian village with the Ojibwe clearing the land and farming, which they did extremely well. However, by 1836, white settlers began pressing for the rich lands held by the Indians.
They were taken to Fort York, and they thought they were signing deeds for their property, and they had actually signed surrenders. So they were kind of defrauded out of their property.
The band then splits into three parts. Chief Assance takes his band to Beausoleil Island, but the land is mostly made up of bedrock and sand, not suitable for agriculture. Eventually, they are forced to leave, and by 1856, Beausoleil First Nation people begin to settle at nearby Christian Island. Located on the southern tip of Georgian Bay, Beausoleil First Nation consists of three islands, Hope and Beckwith, which are uninhabited, and Christian Island, as well as a small portion of the adjacent mainland at Cedar Point. The population on the island stands at around 700. Small wooden houses located along dirt roads are dotted on each side of the hub or village. A portion of the land is designated for cottage leasing. The First Nations Band Office is the central building in the village. It's situated directly in front of the dock where the ferry service operates, connecting First Nations people to the mainland. And it's that stretch of water, that 20-minute ferry ride across to the mainland, that impacts everyone and everything on this island, from simple everyday life right down to the very roots of culture and heritage that define Beausoleil First Nation people.
Anish gajwe bak jinago. Nishan. Anish ejwe bak kujik.
These grade 1 students from Christian Island Elementary School are being taught their native tongue, Ojibwe. Native language teacher Doug King realizes that the language, not that long ago, was in danger of being forgotten.
The language is coming back. The children are feeling a more sense of pride, more willingness to learn their language and where they come from.
King believes that parents could play a very important role when it comes to their children learning the Ojibwe language.
I'm sure more parents, if they knew the language, they would be speaking the language with the children.
Grade 7 student Katie Monague's parents are picking up the language in bits and pieces through their children.
Sometimes they try to learn it when my little sisters come home and say it around the house and get stuck in their heads and they start saying it, but they don't know what it means. so we have to tell them.
And this person is mad. Our language is a part of us. It's who we are. Without our language, we really don't have any identity. It is our culture. It's who we are, and it's very important that we do not lose it. Anish na. Na chinendam.
Rodney Monague, along with his wife Joan, own a bed and breakfast on Christian Island. He first became chief of Beausoleil First Nation in 1968 after serving with Canada's Occupational Services in West Germany. At 25 years of age, he became the youngest chief in Canada and over a span of 20 years remained in this role for a period of 10 terms. He is also a survivor of a very bleak time in Canada's Aboriginal history. Monague was one of thousands of First Nation boys forced to attend residential school, a process with a purpose and intent described to kill the Indian in the child.
And I went to Sault Ste. Marie for a couple of years, and I spent a couple of years in Mohawk residential school in Brantford. I ran away from there. I was terribly homesick. I was 12 years old when I graduated from grade 8, and my birthday's in June, and I just turned 12. And I was brought into a dormitory with 15 or 20 guys that were like 17 and 18 years old, and here I was just a kid. I kind of grew up with that inferiority complex.
While living in the Sioux, Monague becomes friends with Chico Mackey, who went on to play professional hockey for the Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL. This friendship would change his life.
When I got to know a guy like that, I kind of lost a lot of my shyness and hung around guys like that, and they more or less gave me, I don't know, self-confidence or something.
Today, the residential school system no longer exists for Aboriginal people. However, for Beausoleil First Nation high school students living on Christian Island, there are still many challenges that have to be faced.
Got all your stuff?
Yep.
Need a hand?
It's Sunday afternoon, and the Copagogs are saying goodbye to their daughter Alyssa. She's heading off to the mainland and then on to Midland, where she'll stay at a boarding house while attending St. Teresa's High School during the week. On the weekend, she'll return home, providing the weather is stable enough for the ferry to run.
It's really tough on the kids when they first start. It's a thing they have to take a while to get used to. Like, it takes them a few months to adjust to living in town compared to over here.
Typically, Christian Island High School students begin boarding in the winter months, while in the fall and spring, they catch the ferry, hop on a bus at Cedar Point, and head off to school, reversing the process at the end of the day, every day.
First the bubble on Tuesday with a high of +3.
For Alyssa Copagog, homesickness was her biggest issue when she first began boarding while attending St. Teresa's High School.
I was kind of scared, and I really miss my parents, and it's hard being away from them for a long time.
Almost 50 students from Christian Island are dispersed among the 3 area high schools. They include Midland Secondary School, St. Teresa's High School, and Penetanguishene Secondary School. Sylvia Norton Sutherland is employed by the Beausoleil Education Authority, located at the band office on Christian Island. She is the student support worker for the Beausoleil First Nation students.
There's some kids that miss things, and there are some kids who perhaps can't get extra work done if they want to go after school. Those, of course, boarding would be the opportune time, but often you'll find our kids not even participating when they have that opportunity during winter to go into extracurriculars or into getting extra help because, I don't know, shyness factor. They tend not to be willing to ask for help when they need it.
Stephen Bird is a student success teacher responsible for keeping track of at-risk students at Penetanguishene Secondary School.
I did have the opportunity to make a trip to Christian Island just to see the daily ordeal that the students had to go through to get here. And it is in fact an ordeal. It's probably a half-hour drive from the school to the ferry dock alone. And then you're dealing with a 20-minute ferry ride and then the distance from the ferry dock on the island to wherever they live. So total commute for these students can be well over an hour. It was actually an enlightening trip for me to see that if they might be in an off mood or something like that when they get here, you need to take that kind of thing into account.
Grade 12 student Zach King plans on entering a police foundations course at the college level after completing high school. In the beginning, the adjustment to high school was a difficult one for him.
It was kind of tough, like getting to know more people, because you're always used to like people you've been around since like kindergarten, your family, your cousins. It's kind of culture shock. There's a little bit of racism here and there and stuff.
I think there's a greater acknowledgement of who they are as young people and as Native people. I think they tend to have more of pride. I know years ago, back in say the 80s, back in the 70s, people weren't proud to be Native really. It was a movement that started around them then. Not that I was ever ashamed to be Native, but I knew that there were more of the other people than there were of me.
There was a time, and not that long ago, when it was forbidden to practice any of the traditional ways or learn any of the teachings. The Indian agent would see to that. But there are signs here in Christian Island of Native identity and Native pride returning. Christian Island resident Randy King is going ice fishing. It's not the kind of ice fishing that you may be familiar with. First, King, along with his wife and daughter, clear out the ice in a hole that they had cut out a few days ago. Connected to this hole is a net lying in a depth of 25 feet and stretching just below the ice surface to another pre-cut hole 300 feet away.
I'm going to disconnect the rock on this side of the stone to hold that weighs down the net. Okay, I guess we're ready to go back, seeing what they pull up over there. For me, it's really important because there's very few people that do it. It's hard work. You got to go out there when it's cold, you know. You can't let the fish go to waste. I like to see things done native tradition, yeah.
And that tradition for King and his family continues in another form as well.
I chose this turtle as because it's a powerful clan head, eh? And the turtle to natives is the king of all the water clans. Every time I'll do a carving, I'll ask, like my grandfather, when I'm stuck. When I'm really stuck, I'll ask my grandfather, help me along, show me, you know, and that helps me a lot. So it's all been part of our heritage to be artists and to make nice things.
As with native ice fishing, King taught his wife Lila the art of wood carving.
Pretty soon, she's doing a better job than I am. And I'm kind of like been known as the guy who carries the logs out of the bush. You know.
I learned how to speak English when I met my husband. I was raised only in the Ojibwe language. That's the only language we spoke in our house.
Randy and Lila King are hopeful that the younger generation, including their 24 grandchildren, will pick up some of their native traditions.
Yeah.
Which means?
I love my grandchildren.
For Edward Mixamong, affectionately known as Pelly to the Christian Island community, touching base with his native origins has everything to do with his drum, which he calls his grandmother.
I can't do it.
Mixamong is currently on kidney dialysis and in a couple of weeks will be undergoing a kidney transplant. But that doesn't dull the enthusiasm for his passion.
I was really sick one day and I came home and I took my grandmother the drum out and that lifted me up really good and I was able to walk around and I looked at her and I can hear the singing of her and I'm ready, pretty soon I'm ready to go at it again.
Mixamong makes a special effort to pass on his knowledge of drumming and native dancing to the younger generation.
I had a little crippled boy sitting on my drum one day. He was looking at it, and he kept watching us. And I said, So I went up to see his parents. I said, would your son like to be my drum keeper for the afternoon? To see the smile and his face light up, that really lifted him up for that self-esteem. I went through a lot, and I've survived. And I always think about my culture or drumming. I want to keep teaching them. It's worked out good.
The island has two churches, a Catholic church, and just down the road, the United Church. There was a time, however, when never the two shall meet.
We had a line right down the center of the reserve, and on the east side were the Catholics and the west side were the Protestants. And they couldn't get along, and we grew up with that.
Christian Island also has its own radio station, Nish 101.3. The station relies heavily on Aboriginal content for its programming.
Coming up next here is Christian Island's own Brandon Solomon with Direction 4 and the 10th Regiment on Nish 101.3.
Just a kilometer up the hill to the west of the village sits the Christian Island Recreation Center, which also contains the Anishinaabe Police Service. Constable Murray Prasett has been working for the Anishinaabe Police Service for the last 9 months. He feels that when it comes to policing on Christian Island, priority one begins with earning the respect of the people.
Working in a community like this, one day you may have a bad experience with someone, but the next day you may need their help, or you may have another bad experience. But regardless of how you deal with people on this island and in this community, you can't afford to burn your bridges.
Angela Haskell has been working on Christian Island for almost a year now. She catches the 8 a.m. ferry at Cedar Point every weekday morning and heads over to the island where she is the adult education teacher operating out of the community's recreation center.
You're going to see there's a chart on the flip side. If you do a little bit of comparison, I should have maybe done 2 copies of this. I think you always hope that you're going to have a good rapport with your students. But being a small community, the concern is that if for some reason there's something about me that they don't respond to, you're kind of done. It's going well, but it was a huge concern when we got started. Magnanimous. It's almost as great a word as bedraggled.
Haskell's teaching methods are much the same as with any educational system, with one little twist.
I think as a teacher, it's not your job to prescribe last chances. It's your job to keep giving them. And unfortunately, I think some of these students have had too many last chances given to them, and so they didn't finish high school. And when they come back here, it's not my job to give them last chances. So we don't have due dates. It may sound like a simple thing. Other teachers might not get it, but it works here.
I didn't complete high school. I made it to grade 10. I was a teenage mother, so I had my first child when I was 17, and I had my next child when I was 19, and then they're all 2 years apart. I have 3 kids. So they're all grown up now, so that's why I'm back to school.
I went to grade 10 and I quit because I was bad. I skipped, I drank, and I smoked weed. Then I got pregnant. Being here makes me feel good. I just want to be done school before my daughter beats me.
I was actually really good in high school, but I found out I was pregnant when I was 17, so I dropped out. So I was a stay-at-home mom. Now I'm a single mom, and to better my education and be a good role model to my daughter, I came back.
21-year-old Krista Monague completed grade 11 but had to drop out due to an anxiety disorder. She remembers the hardships of traveling to and from high school.
When you come home, you're exhausted. That's why most people quit, because they don't want to go to school. It's so long travel.
But guess what?
Not to mention the issue of boarding while living off the island.
Oh, that was weird. Yeah, I don't know, because you just want to feel at home. Like when you go to school, you come home and relax, right? You can't do that when you're in someone else's house. You don't feel right.
Your climax or your outcome, they've called it, I really want to be there the day they graduate and get their diploma, and I feel I owe them that much. There's been so many teachers in and out of this program before I arrived that the consistency wasn't there to see them succeed, so I want to give them that.
When I receive that grade 12 diploma, it's going to be the best feeling I've ever felt in my entire life.
I learn more from these guys sometimes than I think they learn from me. And I'm okay with that. I just got to try harder so they can learn more from me.
First name is?
Krista.
And spell it?
Krista.
Is that funny?
No, we were talking about this earlier. I'm like, watch, I'm going to spell my name wrong.
Okay, Candace Sylvester has just finished her adult education class offered at the rec center. It's 3 p.m. She now makes the 15-minute walk down to the main dock where she'll catch the 3:30 ferry departing from Christian Island. Grocery shopping can be a complicated and expensive proposition.
Hi, can I have a taxi at Cedar Point, please?
She'd like to be back at Cedar Point in time to catch the 5:30 ferry returning to Christian Island. Otherwise, she'll have to wait until 8 p.m. for the next one.
Thank you. That's rushing. That's just going there, doing what I have to do with paying my bills and getting my groceries, and it's like a rush, rush, rush. You're always rushing to schedule your life and revolve it around the boat schedule. Hi. Good, how are you? It gets quite costly. You could pay $30 one way on a taxi, and then if you have to go downtown to your bank, you pay extra $7. Then you have to go back uptown, you pay the extra $7. So you could pay up to almost $100 in taxis for that one errand to go in and do your shopping.
Then there are the physical demands.
You pick up your groceries and you put them in the taxi, and then you unload them, then you unload them again, then you load them up onto the boat, then you unload them again, and then you get home and you unload them again, and then you put them away. So that's like a lot of lifting and carrying.
One other hurdle that Sylvester had to deal with had nothing to do with cost, travel, or physical demands.
There used to be a place I used to shop at, and because of that incident, I don't shop there anymore. I was accused of stealing groceries underneath my cart, and I guess she thought I wasn't going to put all of the food on top of where you cash out to go, pay for your groceries, and I was just totally shocked by her accusations that I would steal something. I think the reason she said that was because I'm Aboriginal. It made me feel embarrassed.
And we're very delighted to be on Christian Island this morning working with you.
Today, a workshop is being offered to the Christian Island residents on the matter of bullying. The issue of racism also rears its ugly head in the discussion.
It's heavy. People are still coming out from under the experience of the residential schools. The children are still experiencing the impact of the residential schools, even though they aren't in the schools, and in many cases their parents weren't, but in many cases their grandparents and ancestors were. And so we see the heavy-duty hoof prints of that tragedy on the communities that we're working in.
To call us wagon burners now in this lifetime, there's vehicles out there. That was a shock. And squaw, to be called squaw, a squaw is a female Aboriginal person, but to be called a squaw for male, well, I guess they don't know what they were talking about. So my daughter was went through that too. She was called wagon burner, and my son too. It was terrible.
It shouldn't be like that nowadays. We're just like everybody else, trying to make ends meet and raise our children to the best of our ability, and that's what I want people to know about Native people living on Christian Island.
The employment situation on the island is a rather bleak one, aside from those who work for Beausoleil First Nation.
People want to work here. They don't really want to leave here and have to go to work, but that's the reality of most careers. A career choice as a tradesperson, a career choice as a journalist, or whatever career choice people have, they have to leave here to find it.
20-year-old Rochelle Thomas used to live on Christian Island, but recently moved to Midland. She fully admits she has had a rough life until now.
It's the lifestyle I was living in. I don't want to live that anymore. I was just
walking around on the island and seeing this posting, and it looked interesting to me, and I think I just wanted to change my life.
This is Thomas's second week on the job. Through a Georgian college program, she is doing her internship with Walkers, an electrical contracting company based out of Midland. Ultimately, she would like to obtain her electrical apprenticeship.
I thought I didn't need school, so that's why I'm still not graduated yet. But now that I'm older and all the stuff that I went through, you do need your education if you want like a good job and stuff, right?
As soon as the drywall goes on and it's painted, then we'll start putting on devices. She's excellent. She works just as hard or harder than the guys that I have working for us, so we appreciate it.
I spent 3 weeks in the super jail in Penetang because I didn't care about my life. My mom couldn't raise me because she was an alcoholic. Been around alcohol has done pretty much everything bad in my life.
Thomas found some inspiration after winning an essay contest based on the importance of exploring career opportunities. She gave it to the student support worker on the island.
And she shared it with all of the young kids there. They all clapped, so, you know, that's kind of what encourages me more. I just hope it only gets better from here.
Traveling across water to the mainland and back has always been a challenge for Beausoleil First Nation people. Currently, the island is served by the Sandy Graham, which can hold 26 vehicles and 98 passengers. When the ice becomes too thick, the Indian Maiden is put into operation. It's a passenger vehicle only with ice-breaking capabilities of up to 5 inches. Once the Indian Maiden ties up due to ice thickness, a hovercraft and scoot are available for the islanders. Residents can resort to their own methods of transportation once the ice becomes thick enough. A safer and improved transportation system for Beausoleil First Nation members is currently a top priority for Chief Rodney Monague. He's hopeful that a fixed link or causeway can eventually be constructed at Lighthouse Point on the island, leading over to the mainland. But there are many hurdles to overcome before that can be a reality.
In the meantime, I can't continue to keep running this 57-year-old ferry. I'm going to give everything I have to convince the government we need this new ferry.
The harsh reality of living on an island and the challenges Beausoleil First Nation people must face is driven home after a respected community member breaks through the ice in his vehicle while attempting to cross to the mainland. His death shocks the Christian island community. Over the years, many have met the same fate.
It seems like losses are a big part of being an Indian. You know, we've lost a lot of people have lost our language. Culture is an issue as well. And those losses, even though they've happened, we're still here.
Rod Monague takes me to the site where Ste. Marie II was once located, the last stand for the Huron and Jesuit priests. He tells me that back in the late 70s, 88 skeletal remains were uncovered in this area. They were cataloged, listed, and kept in the community hall for some time.
We considered them the first Christians, in Canada. And we convinced the Archbishop in Toronto that they could very well be the first Christians. So he came up and we buried them at the RC Cemetery at the top of the hill. And he more or less consecrated the grounds and did his blessings and so on.
The history, the culture, the people, that makes a community. And in that respect, Christian Island is no different. They have their issues, they hurt, they feel, they celebrate. And they certainly have an identity, one that's getting stronger.
There weren't supposed to be any Indians left by the year 2000. I think it's our spirit that keeps us here. I love Christian Island. My Christian Island's a beautiful place.
Time won't take me back, so I imagine that I'm fighting with the 10th Regiment.